أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين وضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب عليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة وأحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم يوقدون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولوا متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين ودبرنا وثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات. بازار ہے پتھر ہے زینب کا کھلا سر ہے. بازار ہے پتھر ہے زینب کا کھلا سر ہے. بازار ہے پتھر ہے زینب کا کھلا سر ہے. بازار ہے پتھر ہے زینب کا کھلا سر ہے. ہر زخم پہ شکرانہ ہر زخم پہ شکرانہ زینب کے لبوں پر ہے. بازار ہے پتھر ہے زینب کا کھلا سر ہے. بازار ہے پتھر ہے زینب کا کھلا سر ہے. ایک گری آئے خونی کی جاتی ہی نہیں لالی. سجاد کی آنکھوں کو دیکھا ہی نہیں خالی. یا خون ہے آنکھوں میں یا خون ہے آنکھوں میں یا شام کا منظر ہے. بازار ہے پتھر ہے زینب کا کھلا سر ہے. بازار ہے پتھر ہے زینب کا کھلا سر ہے. لٹکا در کوفہ پر دیکھا ہے کوئی لاشا. کیوں چوب سے محمل کی زینب نے ہے سر مارا. اے وقت لہو سے کیوں اے وقت لہو سے کیوں زینب کی جبیں تر ہے. بازار ہے پتھر ہے زینب کا کھلا سر ہے. بازار ہے پتھر ہے زینب کا کھلا سر ہے. یہ شور بکا کیا ہے، ماتم کی صدا کیا ہے، توحید بچائے جو وہ کرب و بلا کیا ہے، یا ہے سر سرور یا ہے سر سرور یا زینب تیری چادر ہے، بازار ہے پتھر ہے، زینب کا کھلا سر ہے، بازار ہے پتھر ہے، زینب کا کھلا سر ہے، ٹکراتی ہے سر اپنا، جائے تو کہاں جائے، معصوم سکینہ کو غش آئے کہ موت آئے، اس کے لیے زندہ میں، اس کے لیے زندہ میں بس خاک کا بستر ہے، بازار ہے پتھر ہے، زینب کا کھلا سر ہے، بازار ہے پتھر ہے، زینب کا کھلا سر ہے، کیوں ہائے حسینہ کیا ایک شور سا اٹھا ہے، سر غازی کا نیزے سے کیوں خاک پہ گرتا ہے، غازی کی بہن شاید، غازی کی بہن شاید بلوے میں کھلے سر ہے، بازار ہے پتھر ہے، زینب کا کھلا سر ہے، بازار ہے پتھر ہے، زینب کا کھلا سر ہے، بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔
This spoken word poem is entitled The Perfect Voice. It's a tribute to the Holy Prophet ﷺ and his beloved granddaughter Bibi Zaynab. The Arab world was in an abyss. Barbaric moods and polytheistic attitudes were the thought of this disgraceful era. A beautiful and divine gem descended onto earth. A beautiful and divine gem descended upon earth. His value could not be quantified, bringing joy to all, even those who had no homes and were living roadside. The poor got their share. They weren't made to stare. The poor got their share. They were no longer made to stare. By the grace of the Almighty, this divine soul brought life to date trees with his gentle touch, truth and tranquility to Mecca's community despite their strife, and love to all walks of life. And love to all walks of life. All skin colors were treated with grace, and their hearts found rest. Bilal and Salman would attest. This divine soul ascended to the heavens with Buraq and eventually announced his prophethood. He developed a system of brotherhood and sisterhood. He built soldiers and warriors, speaking only of God and the absolute truth. Speaking only of God and the absolute truth, his teachings included supplication, prostration, fortitude, and determination. He woke up the masses, nation after nation. He woke up the masses, nation after nation. Discrimination based on wealth, skin color, or family caste system no longer was the norm. A new light had been born. A new light had been born. Along with his trusted cousin's aid, the lion of Allah, the Muslim Ummah did grow. But after the earthly departure of God's two gems, the reformer of mankind and God's valiant lion, hearts got lost. The voice of Imam Hasan and Hussein they did not hear. The Muslim Ummah's hearts became blind. They lost their route to the divine. They lost their route to the divine. They lost sight of our Prophet's ark. Their values were void and apart. The worldly life deluded their eyes, culminating with the bloodshed of Aba Abdullah. Despite the tyranny, one voice stood tall. Despite the tyranny, one voice stood tall. Haydar's daughter spoke with courage. Her words ushered from side to side in the courts, and her valor was eminent. Yazid's treachery came to shame. The echoes of her scholarly ancestry brought shivers to every soul. The echoes of her scholarly ancestry brought shivers to every soul. The Lord of the heavens and the earth watched over her with grace. The voice of Zaynab was brought to the world by God's embrace. The world eagerly listened to her every word. Her knowledge, morality, composure, intelligence, and ethics radiated. Certainty made its way. The reality of truth came to light with what was wrong and what was right. Oh dear Bibi, salutations to you and your beloved family. Your voice we hear. Please ask the angels to stay near. Your voice we hear. Please ask the angels to stay near. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Sayyid Hasan Rizvi, respected elders, dearest brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum, Jamia wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all marhumin listed on the screen as well as all other marhumin. Surah Al-Mubarak Al-Fatiha. Washfa Amirs is requested for all those in need here and elsewhere, as well as those listed on the screen. Let us recite together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. Ya Allah, A reminder that the Burial Assistance Program open enrollment is currently underway. All existing members are requested to please pay their 2024 fees during this period. Those interested in joining the program are encouraged to do so before the enrollment deadline, which is coming up on Wednesday, January 31st. For any questions regarding your membership or the Burial Assistance Program in general, please reach out to either Brother Raza Danji or Brother Subtanius Fali. At this time, let us invite Sayyid Hasan Rizvi to please come forward for tonight's Majlis. Wa Muhammad wa Muhammad salawat.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد صلوات على محمد وآل محمد Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight on the 15th of Rajab, we commemorate the Shahada anniversary of Thaniyat al-Zahra, Zaynab al-Kubra bint Ali, alayhim as-salatu was-salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And just like all the other ma'asumeen, she's been honored with many different titles that you and I know and have memorized. One we just mentioned is Thaniyat al-Zahra, that she's like the second Zahra. Most of you know that she's been referred to as Aqila of Bani Hashim. Right? This Aqila, this wise, intellectual individual from amongst Bani Hashim. Or the other famous one, which was given to her by Imam Sajjad, which was Alama Ghayr Mu'allama. That she's alim, she has knowledge, but she has learned this throughout any direct teacher. One of the lesser known titles amongst the Shi'as is in regards to, we talked about her ilm, her aql, the fact that she carries on the mantle of Bibi Fatima. We know that obviously her ibadah is something that has a lot of fadila in and of itself too. And one of her titles does allude to this fact, and she has been referred to as Abida Ali Ali, the Abida from the family of Ali. Now, what we want to talk about tonight is a little bit about this idea of her being an Abida, this concept of Ibadah and Ubudiyah, which we have talked about previously in some other sessions, but I want to approach it from a slightly different way. Normally when we talk about Ibadah, right? So Abida is just the feminine form of abid, right? It has to do with somebody being an abd, being a servant, being a slave of Allah. This idea of ubudiyah is what? Servitude, slavery, okay. When we think about ibadat, the translation, the idea that comes to our mind is worship, right? Ibadat is worship. It's a bunch of actions that you and I perform, right? Do your ibadat, perform your ibadat. And it works on some level, yes. Ibadat are acts of worship that you and I perform. When we look at it that way, what we're looking at though is the results, the nata'ij or natija, and the idhar or expressions of what ibadah actually is. So ibadah is not just these actions, ibadah is actually a result of some sort of state of mind or an internal feeling and state and hal that somebody has. So that's the part that I want to focus on. Not to say that Ibadah is simply just a bunch of actions, praying and fasting, a'mal and ziyara, mustahab du'as, which obviously we could sit here and we can go through all the different mustahabbat that were performed regularly by Bibi Zaynab, right? That won't really give us much value though. right? Being called an abid or an abida is something beyond just performing multiple things over and over again, right? It's not about kathra. It's not about just performing lots of things. There's obviously something deeper there. And that ties into the actual true meaning of what it means to be an abd or an abid, or in her case, an abida, or this concept of ubudiyah. So that's what we hopefully will be able to go through tonight, is rather than focus on the results of ibadah, we want to go back to the source, what actually causes and leads in this kind of level of ibadah, especially what makes somebody, what has turned Bibi Zaynab into somebody who's referred to as an abida. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So as usual, in most of these discussions and conversations, we want to move beyond English translations, right? To try to get to the heart of the meaning of these actual Islamic concepts and Arabic words. We've done this for most of the things, so we should do this as well. So the two concepts we want to focus on, where abd or abid, they come from what? Ibadah and ubudiyah. So we have to look at those two things. I'm not going to go through all the different dictionaries. There's one famous one that I think breaks it down into a way that you and I can digest fairly easily, and it'll help us along this conversation. So he looks at ubudiyah and then uses that to explain ibadah. So Rajab Isfahani in his Mufradat explains like this. He says, al-ubudiyah, this idea of servitude or slavery, is what? Idharu tadhallul. Ubudiyah, servitude, slavery, is what? It's idhar, meaning expression, showing what? Tadhallul. Tadhallul coming from what? Dhalil, meaning zalil. A person lowering themselves, humbling themselves, or technically when we think of zalil, you don't think about the idea of humbling, you think about being like humiliated. Right? It's a much, much lower sort of status that's there. Humble is one thing. Nobody's going to discard and say, being humble is a bad thing. Right? Everybody's like, yeah, being humble is good. But being humiliated, that has a much, much different connotation to it, right? Usually people think about it as something negative. But this is actually the way that ubudiyah is explained. It's no, a person's actually lowered themselves and they're expressing this idea that they are showing and expressing this humiliation. So this is ubudiyah. Then he says, what ibadah? Ibadah ablagu minha. Ibadah is the maximum, the height and the peak of ubudiyah. So when you want to maximally show your ubudiyah, that's what ibadah is. So ibadah is an expression, it's an action, but it's the best possible one to show how humble, how low, and how humiliated you are in front of somebody or something, right? And then he says, لِأَنَّهَا غَايَةُ التَّذَلُّلِ. This is the highest thing, this is the peak of lowering himself. However, the lowest station, the most maximum amount of humiliation you can subject yourself to, it's like that's what actual ibadah is. And you can think about it in multiple ways, right? Again, we can go back to that idea of worship. People worship, if we're going to stick to that word, people worship for many reasons, and they worship many different things. Right? Right now, it's clear we have a celebrity influencer worship culture, right? Unfortunately, it's there. Whether it's athletes, whether it's singers and entertainers, things like that, people will do that. And if you've seen some of these videos, you see people, when this athlete or influencer or somebody comes, they break down, they fall down, they cry, right? Like some people don't get that feeling when they go and see the Kaaba or the Zari for the first time, right? And these guys are breaking down because this TikToker is in front of them. It's amazing, but that's the connection they have. They feel low and humiliated in front of somebody that is just sitting in front of their phone all day, right? It's interesting phenomenon to study. That's how some people are. And they're willing to do anything and everything for these individuals, right? That's the way it is. So it's a sense of worship, meaning you individual, you person, I am so low and your value and your status is so high, I'm nothing in front of you. Now, obviously, this thing should be done for Allah, but to get to that level, to get to Bibi Zaynab's level, it takes work. It takes us to understand that, okay, maybe the first thing we have to do is to cut out everything else that may be slightly worshipped in our hearts. Maybe we don't see it and realize it directly, but it is there. So let's go through some riwayat and let's see, what are some things that people do actually lower themselves, humble themselves, or humiliate themselves for. So first we'll look at a hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wassalam. He's reported to have said, "Man tadhallala li'ibna'i dunya." Whoever basically turns himself into a zalil, who humiliates himself for who? Li'ibna'i dunya. Not ahl dunya, ibna dunya. This is a different sort of phrase. Normally we see in riwayat sometimes being ahl dunya. Somebody who's like, yeah, he likes the dunya, he likes the world, he's materialistic, she's materialistic. That's one type. Saying these are children of the dunya. Meaning, it's not just a person who's infatuated with the material world, cut off from religion and God and spirituality and all that. This is now, you take a material person, somebody who cuts themselves off from anything beyond their own self, beyond their ego and nafs, and now that person has a kid, literally and figuratively, right? They've trained somebody to be like that. Like a lot of celebrities' kids, right? That's how they end up being, right? The idea of being spoiled. Imagine being spoiled like this from somebody who has access and ability to give you as much dunya as possible, and you do that, what happens to you? Now you're at a whole other level of how engulfed and enamored you are with the dunya. So much so that you're not ahl dunya, you're not a person of the dunya, you're now a child of the dunya. Literally, it's the dunya that has given birth to you now, and you submit to it like a parent. It says, okay, whoever makes themselves zalil, if you humiliate yourself, if I humble myself for somebody who's like that, somebody who is a child of the dunya, who's that materialistic, ta'arra min libas taqwa. It's as if this person has just completely ripped off all taqwa from themselves. Literally, the verb that's used here is, forgive me, but literally somebody's made themselves naked, unclothed, in front of everybody else with that libas of taqwa that they had on. So whatever sort of shame somebody should have had, they've completely done that. Why? Because they're sacrificing their own dignity, their own izzah, just for, not just the dunya, but for people of the dunya. Not for people of the dunya, but children of the dunya. Right? This is one of the lowest stages that somebody could achieve. Now, obviously, that's not where we want to go. We want to go for something higher. Right? So obviously we say we want to go for Allah, right? That's what we want to do. So let's look at how this has been explained from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. And he pretty much gives us, in a sense, almost the opposite of what was explained above. He says, he's reported to have said, La izza illa liman tadallala lillah. He says, there is no izzat, there is no honor, there's no dignity, except for somebody who does lower, humble, humiliate, and makes himself a zalil for the sake of Allah. That's a person who actually has real izzah and honor. These are the people who have principles. So everybody else may not recognize it, but Allah recognizes it. The people of taqwa, the ones who are not ahl dunya, they recognize these things. Right? In the same way, the reason why when we see the ma'asumeen alayhim wassalam acting the way they do, performing these actions the way they do, giving sadaqah to people who are their own enemies, people who are conspiring against them. All of this, a materialistic person is like, what's wrong with you? Why would you do something like that? But for us, because we know that they are the peak of taqwa like that, like, no, this is actually a positive quality. Right? So our whole framework at looking at the actions of people is completely different to everybody else around us. Everybody else has, this idea of self-care and self-truth, and you have to put yourself out there, stand up for, whatever you truly believe in. We say, no, these principles that we have are passed down from somewhere else. And yes, we do lower ourselves for who actually deserves to be worshipped and put up on that pedestal, right? وَلَا رَفْعَةَ إِلَّا لِمَنْ تَوَاضَعَ لِلَّهِ. There's no daraja, there's no station or rank unless a person actually does this, performs this humility for Allah. You won't achieve anything. You and I won't achieve any status or rank in reality. Yes, there are people who, they do have power, they are influencers, they are celebrities, all eyes are on them, but in the grand scheme of things, there's nothing for them, right? Yes, maybe you are one of the first, second, third greatest military powers in the world, but maybe, the court of justice shuts you down a little bit, right? Maybe puts you in your place. Maybe the world opinion turns against you, things like this. People think that simple things, these materialistic, dunyawi things can put them up on a pedestal, but just like that, they can be brought down. And just like that, Allah is also telling us through the Imam that, look, if you and I lower ourselves and humble ourselves for the right reasons, that's where we truly are raised in this dunya and in the akhirah as well. We're going to look at one more hadith. And this is where sometimes we might think that we're actually going after Allah. Because you might say, yes, I'm not a zalil for the dunya or the people of the dunya or children. I'm not materialistic like that. I might make mistakes. Yeah, sometimes I like things. I like nice things. That's fine. That's okay. But I'm not going to humiliate myself and reduce my principles for something low. Okay, hopefully most of us are like that. Okay, yeah, no problem. But sometimes we might think that we have our eyes and our heart and our soul set on Allah, but we actually miss Allah and went for something else. And we see this very clearly in many riwayat, many of which you're all familiar with, but I want to take this directly from some of the famous short dua from the words of Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam. In just this short excerpt of one of his du'as, we want to focus on the way that he's explaining his reason for ibadah. All right, sometimes our reason, we're like, it's for Allah, right? Like, okay. Imam says, Ilahi, ma abadtuka khawfan min narik. Ilahi, right, my ilah, the one that bewilders me and amazes me. I didn't worship you because I was afraid of your hellfire. That's not why I worshipped you. I didn't do ibadat because I was scared of hell. وَلَا طَمْعًا فِي جَنَّتِكَ. And I wasn't greedy for your Jannah as well. Not scared of hell, and I'm not greedy for Jannah. Neither of these are the reasons the Imam's saying, that's not why I do your ibadah. وَلَكِنِّي وَجَدْتُكَ أَهْلًا لِلْعِبَادَةِ. Because I saw that you are the ahl of ibadah. You were worthy of ibadah. فَعَبَدْتُكَ. That's why I did this ibadah. Because there is nothing else out there worth lowering for. There's nothing else out there worth sacrificing principles for. The only thing that's there is Allah and Islam, and that's it. So the Imam clearly lays this out that, yeah, look, I'm not saying don't go after Jannah. I'm not saying that hellfire is a good thing. But the way that the Imam sets the stage and kind of raises the bar higher for us, especially us as the Shia of the Ahlul Bayt, is that yes, maybe in the way the Quran explains things, yeah, scare some people with hellfire. Okay, sure. Give some people some, you might get some rewards too of all these things listed out in the Quran, riwayat. Okay, that's there. But perhaps the Imam's trying to get us, right, us Shia, the ones who are really trying, like, okay, look, you had your sights set on that, but that's not the real reason you do ibadah in the first place, though. You tell me, everybody here can answer for themselves. Imagine that you were able to achieve all these different rewards in a certain level of Jannah. Right? Imagine Allah says, look, I can grant this to you. You'll get one of these great stations and amazing places in Jannah, but it's going to be farther away from the households of the Ahlul Bayt in Jannah too. I can get you closer to the household of the Ahlul Bayt in Jannah, but then you won't get all these nice attractions in Jannah. Which would you pick? Every single person here would say, no, I need to be near Rasulullah. I need to be near Fatima. I need to be near Ali. I need to be near Hasan, Hussein, Abbas. I need to be near all them. I want a maqam and a darajah. I want a bayt. I want a house next to them. This Jannah stuff doesn't matter to me that much. Yeah, maybe we don't verbalize it like that, but deep down, everybody wants that. How many people here, if they could, they'd give up things here and they'd move to Karbala, to Iraq, to Iran, any of these places, like, yes, so I can be closer to the Haram. Most people would give it up in a heartbeat. So that already means that, yes, deep down, we are actually going for that higher principle. Now we just need to make sure that we focus our ibadah in that same exact way. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, I want to go back to this English word worship, right? A lot of times English words don't really do justice to this Arabic concept, right? Ibadat, say worship, it doesn't really make sense because worship just means act, right? Performance. And we said that it's not that. It's about this feeling and expressing this humiliation, right? That's the idea. Well, yes and no. The reason that some of these English words that are chosen don't fully give us the message is not because the word doesn't do justice, it's because we don't actually know the English very well. This word worship, do you know actually where it comes from in Old English? Worship actually comes from worthship. Worthship. Meaning that worship is for somebody who has this quality of worthship, which is exactly what the Imam's saying. The reason we perform these acts of worship is why? Because somebody has that worthship, meaning they have this worthiness in them. That's why we're doing it. Now, yes, there are some people out there who don't have their eyes set on who is actually worthy. But they can hopefully be guided. You and I, maybe we can just reorient ourselves a little bit, right? Hopefully not too much. And maybe that'll set our eyes the way it needs to go. Right? But this word actually does, I think, make sense. And a lot of other English words, when you do see the original meanings, it actually, is there. These words came from individuals who had a very spiritual connection, whether these words from Old English are Judaic in nature or Christian in nature. A lot of them had these deeper meanings, right? Even something like goodbye. It's like, oh, it's secular, right? It has no meaning. You know where it comes from? Goodbye, what it used to be? It used to be God be with ye. Which is literally like what? Like fi amanillah, right? Something like that, or ma'a salama, or ma'allah, right? The same way we would speak in other languages, right? Khuda hafiz, stuff like that. God was already there, but over time, it got taken away. Now it's just goodbye, right? So a lot of words, like worship, same thing. Used to be something spiritual, but little by little they kind of cut away at it, and now we're left with kind of these scraps. We can sometimes go back to the original meaning, even in English, and that gives us kind of a hint. Now, there's one other point that I want to mention before ending tonight. And it's, we got a deeper meaning, hopefully. We heard some of the words of the Ahlul Bayt, but we still need to figure out, okay, what is the source and the reason for why Bibi Zaynab is an abid in the first place? Why does she get that title? Why does she get that quality? And what we'll see, inshallah, is that it should be very, very obvious, which I'll explain if you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So the clue exists. It's within most of the titles that she's been given, right? She's Thaniyatu Zahra. Zahra's second. Zahra's double, if you will. She's Aqilatu Bani Hashim, right? This wise woman from amongst Bani Hashim. And she's what? Abida, not just Abida, but she's Abida Ali Ali. In every single one of these titles, just like for many other Ma'sumin, but specifically her, you can see her family is being mentioned every single time. Right? So, Thaniyatu Zahra. Like she's doubling or acting in the maqam, or acting and replicating and imitating who? Zahra. When it's Aqila Bani Hashim, she's this wise woman from amongst the wise people of Bani Hashim. And what she's Abida of Ali Ali, saying that yes, this ibadah, this ubudiyah, the fact that she's an abd is because she's from Ali Ali. So in all these titles, what it should help us understand is yes, there's a huge part of it which comes from ourselves and our free will and what you and I try our best to do, but the strongest foundation is going to come from our family, meaning tarbiyah and upbringing. I know it gets said over and over and over again, but however many times we mention these points, it will never be enough. Because sometimes we need these reminders that the ibadat that we try to inculcate in our children, everybody, our daughters, even our sons, we want them to have the ibadat level of Zaynab. Of course we do. Everybody wants that, right? But are they actually willing to go through the same process that the family of Zaynab is going through too, right? That's the difference. We want the natija, we want a Zaynab, but are we willing to act like the people who are around Bibi Zaynab? Right? Let me explain a bit more. If you can recite another salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. A lot of us, when we're trying to get our kids, our young kids to understand, or again, perform ibadah, we go back to that original meaning of just acts of worship, right? Okay, read Quran, read namaz, grab this tasbih, do this thing, that's it. It's just actions. Okay? What we focus on sometimes is just the how-to part. Here's the rules, regulations, procedures, bylaws, exceptions, like that. That's all it is. That's all we talk about. It's just rules, mannerisms, that's all, right? We don't talk about the adab. We don't talk about the hub, the muhabbat, the connection, the hudur al-qalb, any of this stuff. Some people, yarhamukumullah, some people might mention it, but what they forget is that you can't just talk somebody into love. You can't just say, do this for the love of Allah. Like, what are you talking about? What do you mean, do this for the love of Allah? You can't express and just tell somebody to have this loving relationship with anybody or something, something else. It's not going to happen. It doesn't work like that. So where a lot of us as parents, our shortcoming is yes, we have to teach them the ahkam, obviously. I'm not saying don't do that. You have to teach them how to do that. But usually the procedure, the how-to, comes from just, monkey see, monkey do. That's simple. Through observational learning, they'll just repeat the motions and they'll figure it out. And little by little, they might ask, okay, why'd you do this? Why'd you do this extra this way? Or why didn't you do this? They will ask themselves at some point anyway. So you don't have to force too much of that on there. Naturally, that'll come. Or you can, little by little, start to give them more of the ahkam at some point. Again, we're talking about younger children right now. What needs to be actually properly expressed or even explained, but in the right way, is not the how-to, but more of the whom-to. Like, okay, to whom are we actually showing this ibadah and expressing our humility to? Who is this going to? If kids don't have a concept, a real concept of Allah as somebody that people should be, that as a mahbub, that somebody we love, as a parent that I love, then what are they going to understand from that? They'll just see a bunch of actions, like, okay, no problem. Let's repeat that. The same way that if in the, let's say, middle of namaz, if one of my kids sees me, scratching my beard or something like that, then they'll start scratching, well, they don't have a beard, obviously, 4 girls, right? But they'll start doing the same thing too, because they're just going to repeat the actions, right? So you can have them repeat anything that you do, but you have to show that, no, these are acts of love. This is not an act of love. This is just because my beard is itchy, because I haven't conditioned it in a while. That's why, right? That's a different reason for that altogether. The worthiness for Allah that showing of love is something that needs to take precedence over everything else. That's how children truly develop and want to go out. I get asked over and over again by parents, not just here, many communities. I need my kid to read namaz. I need them to read Quran. I need them to do this and that. So of course, the first thing that I ask, because usually they don't always come out very neutral. They come out kind of negatively. My kid does not want to read namaz. They don't want to do this. They want to observe hijab. They don't want to XYZ. They just give me the list. My child doesn't want to do XYZ, whatever. And usually my response is, okay, well, what didn't you do though? Or what did you do? What do you mean? I'm like, there is no child to blame for the lack of an action. Every single time it's going to come back to the parent. Every single time. Don't tell me media or their friendships or any of that stuff. No. Don't blame it on somebody else. Take responsibility. Me as a father, I'm going to take responsibility. Say, yeah, if I see a deficiency, it's because I had the deficiency. They're just mirroring my deficiency. That's all they're doing. If I don't like the fact that they're not reading Quran enough, it's because I'm not reading Quran enough. And I'm not making it, trying to make a plan of it to do it in a way that they're observing that I do it. Or that I love doing it too. And reciting, tajweed in a beautiful way. So they say, oh, wow, this is really good. You can sit around and recite like this. Or am I just reading namaz and as soon as I'm done, just getting up and running away? Or after namaz, am I just in this angry, temperamental state, right? Because of something else that's going on. They'll pick up on all these little things. If they don't see that this salah is a connection to Allah and it should remove those burdens, if they don't see that the Quran, when reciting, is supposed to give this sakina and sukoon in my heart, they're going to see everything else that, yeah, okay, I just sit there like a parrot, repeat this stuff, do these actions, and I'm done. And what's usually going to happen as a result of that? They'll do all this stuff just to get it done. Like any other test, like homework. Right? Like, let me just get it done, get it out of the way so I can move on with things that I actually enjoy. To go watch TV, play games, do whatever. Right? Because that's actually interesting. This stuff is not interesting. I don't have that connection. So that connection is going to come when you and I show that. Now, the question comes back to us then as parents, right? Do you and I actually have this sort of love for Allah or not? You might want to say, yeah, of course I do. No. I'm not saying answer me. I'm saying you and I have to be honest to ourselves. My teacher used to say this all the time. When we talk about the concept of honesty, there's the easy version, which is, honesty is the best policy. But yeah, so be honest to everybody else. Okay, that's the easy one. The toughest type of honesty is self-honesty. Can I sit down within my own thoughts and say to myself, am I honestly trying my hardest? Am I honestly doing my best? Am I honestly a good example? Am I a good role model as a father for my children or not? Am I doing the best I can for the community? Am I supportive? What am I doing? Sometimes shaitan will jump in and help you rationalize, well, no, you getting angry, it was fine over there. You being rude, it's okay, that person deserved it, right? So that fake rationalization can easily happen. Self-honesty is breaking through all of that nonsensical self-talk and saying, no. What I did was wrong. I need to do tawbah and istighfar. I need to apologize. I need to go and make amends. I need to go do something right. Yes, even to my kids. I know sometimes ego breaks and hurts a little bit, but yes, kids deserve, out of more than anybody else, kids deserve apologies too. Yes, I shouldn't have yelled. Yes, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. Yes, even if your kids are older. Kids might be in your 20s and 30s, but sometimes they deserve apologies. Like, look, sorry, for 20, 30 years of your life, I screwed up. I'm really sorry. I want to try to make amends. I want to try to do the best. I'm not saying I want you to turn into, an alamat tabai overnight, but I want to try a little bit, to rebuild our relationship and repair it. That, for a lot of kids, goes a long way, right? Just to reopen that and not to kind of force these things on there. Let me explain a little bit more. Maybe this will be the last point after another salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. Again, the summary of these previous points is what? We want our children to have a Zaynabi level of ibadah. Clear. Okay, so that means that I need to have an Alawi level of ibadah then, right? I need to be like Ali. Clear. The mother needs to be like Fatima. That ibadah needs to be taking place in the household. And it needs to be taken place in a way where a child can see that this is not just something that they're doing to get out of the way. This is something that they're connecting to. And I'm witnessing that. And it's not just that Bibi Zaynab is seeing Imam Ali and Bibi Fatima. She's also seeing Imam Hasan and Imam Hussein. Same thing. She's like, okay, so now my older siblings, my older brothers, I'm seeing the way that they do their ibadah too as young kids. This is how a household is formed and how they pass on those same teachings to everybody else. Right? And they usually teach this in terms of, when, sibling rivalry sometimes happens, right? This is a common parenting question too. I don't want, let's say it's now second child baby comes to the family. The older one, usually there's some sort of rivalry or jealousy, things like that. Like, well, that happens if the parents set up some sort of rivalry. Sometimes that happens, unfortunately. Or you don't involve the older child, the eldest, into the actual training of the younger one. Say, okay, why don't we pick out their clothes today? Why don't we teach them about this, about namaz? Why don't you read them a book? When you get them involved in the quote-unquote parenting, tarbiyah process, they want to do something like that. The reason why they get so jealous and upset is because they feel like they've been cut out of the family. So what you do is you double down your efforts and say, no, I need your help in this. You're a part of this and you have to help raise them. Like all those good qualities that you have, you want them to have the same thing, right? Like, yeah, of course I do. So the same thing happens there. So we want our kids, a lot of parents, they tell me, I give them these examples of the Ahlul Bayt. They'll say, I told my kids about Bibi Zaynab and her level of ibadah, right? I've given her the stories, and it still doesn't have an effect on them. I'm like, okay, think about it. You and I want our kids to be affected by hearing that Bibi Zaynab on Sham Ghariba is sitting down reciting Namaz al-Shab and Mustahab Salah. For us, that breaks our heart. We want a child to be affected by that, right? For a child, if in their mind it's just getting something out of the way, then they're like, I don't understand, what's the value? How is hearing this story about Bibi Zaynab, yeah, okay, I kind of like her, but her sitting down, Sham Ghariba, reading Namaz al-Shab, like, how is that going to increase me and push me to go and do namaz? Like, there's a disconnect. Maybe you and I, who need a boost, a story like that, yes, it touches our heart, it causes that narmeen, that softness, and then, yeah, it opens us up. For a child, they may not have that, that capacity yet. So it's almost a reverse procedure, right? We have to get our kids first to understand how Bibi Zaynab can do and perform and say, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. And then it's like, that's that same person who says, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila, that's the one who can sit down, thirsty, broken-hearted, on Sham Ghariba and recite her namaz al-Shab for Allah. It's not namaz al-Shab, then Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. It's the other way around. Ma ra'aytu illa jamila, all I see is beauty, all I see is Allah. And that's why everywhere I go, I lower myself, I humble myself, I humiliate myself. Because there's nothing except for Allah. That's it. When a child recognizes that, right, that this is, Allah has granted me all these gifts, that even the bala, the troubles that come in my life, even when I'm a kid, if it can be framed in that way, that yeah, but Allah's doing this because there's something special in you, and He's trying to unlock that from you. Just like He did for Bibi Zaynab and Imam Hussein and all that. Then maybe the child starts to build that connection a little bit too. That loving aqeedah comes in, and then the ibadat comes naturally. It's a natural result of all this. This same connection of ibadah, this is the language that even the Ahlul Bayt spoke with themselves and amongst each other too. Whenever they wanted to build their connections, to speak to one another, this language of ibadah poured through as well. We famously remember how before Imam Hussein goes, when he's doing his al-wida, he's sending his final salams to Bibi Zaynab. He's giving his wasiyah. One of his final words to Bibi Zaynab is what? He references her ibadat. He says, La tansini fi nafilat al-layla. Don't forget me in your nafilat al-layl. Hussein knows that Zaynab is going to go, no matter what happens, and she's going to recite her namaz al-Shab. He says, don't forget me then. This is how they connect. Even Imam Sajjad narrates, and as he is looking at the ibadat of his aunt, he says, I saw my aunt Zaynab from Karbala to Kufa to Sham. We had nothing with us. Like, we were given small pieces of bread for the whole day. That's all we were allowed to eat. He says, I saw Zaynab reciting her wajib namaz. Sometimes she had to sit down and do this. Why? Because they wouldn't let us stop. She was too tired. She was too weak. Sometimes that's how she was reciting it. And the little piece of bread that she had, when she saw that these other children that were with her, the other women didn't have enough, she would share that and give up that. So then her days turned into roza as well too. She'd be fasting these days too. This is the ibadat of Zaynab. This difficulty of this safar is not affecting her like this, where it makes her reject her ibadat. It increases her ibadat. That's what hub, that's what love, that's what ishq does when you lower and humble and humiliate yourself for Allah. So Allah, whatever happens, it's not going to remove me from connecting back to you. This is al-Masa'ib. Al-Masa'ib, why? It's because amongst the Ahlul Bayt, she was probably the one, and I'd say only, that has seen musibah after musibah after musibah, generation after generation after generation. Which other member of the Ahlul Bayt had something like that? At a young age, she loses Rasulullah, who she was so connected with. She loses Rasulullah there. So her heart is broken firstly there. There, after that, now she's there. She's going together. They're burying her grandfather. And now what happens? Saqifa. She sees that, look how they've treated my father. So her heart gets broken again. She sees this masa'ib in the ummah. Then we move forward. Not too long after that, she sits there with her mother and she hears these screams, these yells, and these threats from the door. She has to deal with the house being burnt down. This is what Zaynab has to deal with. After this, she has to see and witness her mother in this state. She has to see Fatima in this state still doing her duties, cleaning the house, taking care of them, all of this. She has to be there for the ghusl as a young child and try to help out perform the ghusl of Fatima. You imagine for a young child to perform the help out with the kafan, the ghusl on a mother like this, how difficult it must have been. And then not long after this, then now she loses her father as well. He has iftar at her house, and now that's it, her father's no more. She has to see that mark on his forehead, to witness as that poison was coursing through Imam Ali. She sees this. Then she sees how her brother, Imam Hasan, is treated. The poison's given to him. People were betraying him. People tried to assassinate him. She's watching this masa'ib. And now, she's thinking that maybe my brother now will be buried alongside my grandfather. Maybe he'll be buried alongside Rasulullah. And as they go out with that taboot needs to be taken back and coming back to the household of the Ahlul Bayt. And as they are there, Abbas and Hussein are taking out arrow after arrow. Zaynab comes and begins to pull out arrows too. Hussein and Abbas turn and say, Zaynab, let us handle this. This is not something for you. He says, what kind of sister would I be if I can't help my brother in this situation? This is the musibah that continues for Zaynab. And now we fast forward and finally there is al-Masa'ib in Karbala. She's there trying to take care of the children, to take care of all these individuals, to take care of her imam on the day of Ashura. She's the one who has to help Hussein get on top of his horse. She is the one that she has to hear Hussein say, Zaynab, I know this is my amanat, Sakina, take care of her after I'm gone. And has to listen to as Hussein tells Sakina, I know that you like to sleep on my chest. Please, Zaynab ko tang mat karo. Don't bother Zaynab. Go to sleep when she tells you to. Listen to what she says. This is what Zaynab has to witness and to listen to. Zaynab, over and over again, she has to do this and still maintain her izzat, her dignity, her composure, and her sabr. As she takes away and takes Imam Sajjad from the burning tents and pulls him out like this. Imam Sajjad is still sick. He's not fully recovered yet. Bibi Zaynab then, Sham Ghariba is over. She's there watching guard over all the men and the women and the children that are left with a broken spear in her hand, as the famous poets and riwayat tell her that on that night when she's in and out of consciousness, when she sees this rider coming closer and closer to her on this day, on this night, and she sees this man with a face covered, he says, don't come closer to me. Don't you know who I am? I am the daughter of Ali. Don't come closer to me. I am the daughter of Fatima. Don't come next to me. Don't you know what we've been through? Leave us alone. When this rider comes closer and removes his scarf and his veil, he says, don't you know, Zaynab, it's me, Ali, your father. He says, Baba, where have you been? We've been calling you this whole time. And look at me, Zaynab, and look how I've been treated like this. على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمري صلوات على محمد وعلى محمد.
घबराएगी ज़ैनब घबराएगी کہ کہاں پائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، تم ثانی زہرا کی غریبی کو سمجھنا، غازی کی قسم ہے تمہیں بھائی نہ تڑپنا، بے پردہ تیری لاش پہ جب آئے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، کس طرح گزاروں گی قیامت کا وہ لمحہ، جب شام غریبہ میں میرا بھائی نہ ہوگا، بابا سے نگاہیں نہ ملا پائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، انصاف کرو کیسے بہن دل کو سنبھالے، اس گنج کا احساس مجھے مار نہ ڈالے، باغی کی بہن شام میں کہلائے گی زینب،
گھبرائے گی زینب،
جزاک اللہ،
گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب،
تم میری طرح غم یہ اکیلے ہی سہو گے، وعدہ کرو یہ بات نہ بانوں سے کہو گے، زندہ میں سکینہ کو جو دفنائے گی زینب،
گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب،
دیکھی نہیں جائیں گی وہ مایوس نگاہیں، صغرا جو اسے دیتی ہے جینے کی دعائیں، اکبر کے بنا جب بھی وطن جائے گی زینب،
گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب، گھبرائے گی زینب،
کیا کیا ہوا بازار میں بتلائیں گی کیسے، عبداللہ یہ جعفر کو میں سمجھاؤں گی کیسے، جب نیل रसन के उन्हें दिखलाएगी ज़ैनब,
घबराएगी ज़ैनब, घबराएगी ज़ैनब, घबराएगी ज़ैनब, घबराएगी ज़ैनब।
भाई पे नजर करके तकल्लुम वो पुकारी, भैया ये मत समझना के तबीयत को तुम्हारी, अच्छा ये सदा लब पे नहीं आएगी ज़ैनब,
घबराएगी ज़ैनब, घबराएगी ज़ैनब, घबराएगी ज़ैनब, घबराएगी ज़ैनब।
सूरतुल फातिहा।
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله والأرواح التي حلت بفنائك وناخت برحلك، عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعل الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، خصوصا سيدي ومولاي بالفضل العباس وأختك زينب وبنتك سكينة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك شهادة الشموت لا إله إلا الله السلطان أبا الحسن مولانا علي بن موسى الرضا، كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان، عجل الله لك ما وعدك من النصر وظهور الأمر جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة، حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمديه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
That's why we can't switch that.